Good afternoon. Welcome back to East Asia International Management. Today is week 11. We're almost finished the course. We're talking this week about negotiations, but specifically related to different cultures. Chinese and Japanese would be a big focus. Hopefully, you guys can apply different details that become quite interesting related to what you think in one country is interesting or acceptable versus obviously some of these you're not allowed doing in other cultures. I have been living in Vietnam for many years and I didn't really understand this. So Tom, can you explain this first in Vietnam? I understand this. Hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. This just means a sign of good luck in Canada. You can show this at a funeral, at a marriage, at any company, any sporting event. It is a good sign to show somebody else. It's basically wishing them good luck. So Tom, can you explain what does this sign mean when you cross two fingers in Vietnam?
So basically, so as I understand, so this side is kind of like it's not good. So when we see someone is not our favorite, so we normally we do like that. It's kind of like we can stop our relationship here.
So this is the sign that it's an X in Canadian thinking style. What you were describing is basically an X. Means that I don't like you anymore, we're finished, we're through. So this is the sign of an X for you. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So for me and some kind of what I know and the people surround me.
And would you definitely understand the middle finger in, if I put these ones down, the middle finger in Canada and United States and North America, this is a very bad sign, which means you definitely don't want to continue that topic or that conversation or connection to that person. You're saying this sign and this sign are basically the same.
So in Vietnam, for the middle finger for us, it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, in North America, yeah. It really matters. It would start a fight. Okay, that's a good point. Same thing in Canada. This is a good sign. Do we have somebody from France here today? I don't think anybody have any of you traveled or spent much time in France?
Well, I've traveled there, but I've never saw this sign. I know it as good.
You know it as what? As good. Okay. Yes. In Canada and United States, this is usually a sign of okay. Everything is okay. Everything is good. In other countries, for example, in Korea, this is usually a sign of money. It's not a bad sign. It's usually a good sign, money. So in France, you know, each country, there's different values. The whole point is if you're going in to some meeting with somebody else and you're trying to negotiate with somebody else, if you do things that you think are okay, for example, if you think this is okay or you think this is okay, and you start doing this to the other people where they understand it as very bad, obviously there's going to be big problems. So you have to understand the other culture before you go into the meetings, before you especially go into international negotiation meetings. There's a variety of things. Anybody else have any other examples you'd like to explain or talk about? Thomas, you're from a different country. Ulugbeck, you're from a different country. Would you like to identify or try to describe any other body language or signs that may not be acceptable in your country, but you have heard they're okay in other countries?
I personally do not know about like any body sign that we would have that in other countries, like people see somehow different. I would say that it is the same with, for example, the US. That is something that is, I don't think that it would start a fight, but like it is really impolite, let's say, or like you shouldn't usually use it.
So you're describing some body language, but which one are you talking about? Are you talking about any one of these or something in specific?
Yeah, the same as in the United States, the middle finger.
Oh, the middle finger. Okay. What about the thumbs up sign? What does that mean to you?
It means like a good job.
Okay, good job. Versus you see in Thailand, it's equivalent. It's obviously a bad thing. Also in Thailand, some people say patting you on the back. In Canada and United States, it's generally a good sign, especially for a younger person. Saying good job, you pat on the back. That is similar to saying good luck, good job, good things. But in Thailand, you're not supposed to do that. Especially, you're not supposed to touch their heads for any reason. There's a lot of these things. This sign in Turkey, I believe it's the same in throughout Europe. I think in Italy also it means the same type of thing. This and this generally mean the same thing. Do you understand that to be the same in Germany?
No, it looks like someone stole my nose.
Yes. Also, yes. In Canada and United States, the same thing. The idea you put a small little sign inside your fist, and young children think that is your nose. If you grab their nose, you grab their head and play with the nose, then take your hand away and you show this, it looks like it could be their nose, and you can pretend like you stole some child's nose. Sometimes they start crying and then you laugh about it. But in some countries, it's obviously bad. I believe in Korea, this is the same idea. This is a bad thing. You're not supposed to do that in Korea. So there's many things. For example, this generally means in Canada and United States, have a good time or party on. This obviously is a bad sign. You don't like the other person. This is a good sign, good job. This is a good job. I'm okay. Everything is okay in Canada, United States. This means good luck. Have a good time. I wish you luck. I wish you well. It's good meanings. This generally means come here. There's no other special meaning related to it other than just come here. You're not supposed to point at people to be very polite. You're not supposed to basically summon very big people to come here. But for example, if you're teaching and you're talking to an assistant or a student and you don't want to bother the class, you could use something like this. This just could mean hello or stop. But as you see, some of these are very bad in different countries. So today we're going to be talking about what are the different things that we have to watch and how can we watch those things. And I wanted to point out, you have a question?
I just thought, you know, this gesture, like pointing your head.
Pointing to your head to me just means think about it.
Because in German, it would be kind of offensive, like you're crazy. Right? Show this to you, it's like there's something wrong with your head.
Okay, I could see that. I've been traveling so much internationally. To me, I don't even remember what regular Canadians think anymore because I've learned so many different cultures. It could mean, I could understand, think about it, or you're crazy, this person's crazy, yes. It could be good, it could be bad, depending on who you're with. Usually in Canada and United States, moving your hand in circles means that person is crazy or stupid or bad. There are many things, not just these hands. Usually you don't see these in most negotiations. In North America, if you have a bad negotiation, yeah, you can see this, but you're also probably going to see the guy throwing something at you or walking away when they're doing this. So it's pretty obviously, it's going to be a very bad thing. Try to understand what's going on. With our course, everything being through this bit.ly EAM outline, I want to also talk about how not only are we close to the end of the class, but each week we have several different things to talk about. This week, as I said, we're not just focusing on negotiations internationally and the communications across cultures, but there's the files here with many different videos. So if we take a look at these videos and these extra articles, I highly encourage you guys to try to start talking about some of these. Tom will provide the class with a little bit of time. If any of the students want to present what this is talking about, I can give extra participation points for this. It's describing here lessons from going abroad, learning about different negotiating styles. Here is another file, an article talking about the Japanese negotiation style, which would be very different in several ways. We have already talked about the Japanese style in a few classes. Before I move on and show you other videos that you can also get information about and share, anybody want to try to summarize what you remember is distinct about Japan and the Japanese negotiation styles?
So can I share what I remember about that?
About the, sure, go ahead.
Japanese yes. So normally the Japanese people, they are very quiet. So even so in a negotiation meeting, so they takes a lot of time. So for the beginning, so they would like to get to know about the other people, and small talk is very good for them. And also when they consider something, so they're very quiet. That means the opposite side need to think about, the better ideas. For example, for the price, user price.
I'm trying to show, here is one of the old files that has been presented, and it is talking about Japan. Don't see which slide it is for sure. Here it's talking about United States versus Latin American style. Some of these are talking, here's some information more about the Japan. If you can see these. For example, this is talking, United States will use their hands, talk a lot. There's a lot of good things here. Some people, supposedly Germans, may feel that people that are using too much body language, they're perhaps clowning around, not serious enough. It's better to be sitting down and being just serious, writing on the paper, shaking hands, no more than that, just seriously focusing on some negotiations. That could be one thing. These studies that we've talked about in class, we've talked about several things. Number one, what you were just describing, the Japanese and time, please don't misunderstand. Some Japanese, for example, if you have your card, if I'm meeting you the very first time, I should give you a card. What I'm doing right now seems normal. What is the problem with this if you're trying to negotiate in Japan? Anybody? Thomas, Ulugbeck? I meet you, I just go like this. What's the problem with that?
Sorry, I cannot see the action. So Japanese people, they don't, so when they meet the other person, normally they bow.
Yes, you have to bow.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to bow, and the level of the bouncing is very important. If you bounce very lower to the ground, so that means you are very respecting the other people. And the bouncing level is depends on the position and the other position.
Internationally, Japanese will bow, but if you are not Japanese, you are not expected to bow. It is extra nice if you do, but you do not have to bow to others in Japan. Usually they will understand the basics. But the idea, most people are trained you're supposed to present a name card. You're supposed to present your business card. What I was showing, for example, usually the Japanese will show up to a negotiation early. Sometimes at least 2 to 5 minutes before the meeting, they will be there. They're showing that it's very serious to them. That time that they get there before the meeting starts it's a sign that they're very serious about it. They're taking it serious. The idea that they will bow to you, usually the level of the bow, same in Korea, is showing their level of respect for that person, that negotiation, that level. That is one thing. But non-Japanese don't usually have to bow. But the next step is usually the Japanese will give their name card. They will introduce themselves. In North America, many people will not. Many people don't even have a name card or business card. If you do not give a business card, that is a sign, for example, in Japan, that you're not important. You're not being introduced. For example, in China, Japan, and Korea, many of the meetings, the highest level person, when they come into the room, somebody else will be there first to prepare the room. And when they come in, they will be introduced. Who they are, what is their level. Sometimes even they will say, what is their age, to clarify details. In Japan, it's the same. And if you're not that high, if you don't have somebody else introducing you, usually you will be giving name cards. Giving the name card, you don't just use one hand. Usually you should use two hands at the same time as you bow. And after you get the name card, you do not put it in your pocket. You definitely don't put it on your ass. You don't put it next to a disrespectful area. This is considered their face. So you're supposed to put it on the desk in front of you, just like the contract. You should have as much respect for the name card as you do for them. And you keep it there. The other thing that you were talking about is time.
Yes.
When you do that in Japan, same thing in Korea, but more in Japan, when you are giving somebody a contract, when you're giving somebody your name card, your business card, they will take it and they will look at it. And usually they will take at least 10 seconds, maybe a full minute or 2 minutes. They will just look at it. And it does not mean they don't want to talk. It does not mean they don't care. It generally just means it is a sign of respect. They're trying to evaluate how much effort you needed to get to your level of success. So if you're a young person, they may take it and start talking very quickly. But if you're a high level person, you're supposed to take the name card, look at it longer than it takes just to read and say, thank you very much. Wow, it's an honor to meet you. If you don't do that, for example, if you don't give them your name card, that's a sign that you're not serious. That's a sign that you're not an important person. You don't care about them. If you definitely very quickly put it in your pocket, that also could be an insult to them. Next, the idea of somebody in negotiations is offering a price. Like a North American person is trying to sell a chair, then they could say, here is the chair, here's the product, I can sell it to you for $100 each chair. The same thing as a name card. The Japanese should not very quickly respond. Throughout East Asia, the Confucian culture is you're supposed to be under control. And under control means your body. You're not supposed to do a lot of facial expressions. You're not supposed to flap around like a bird or a crazy animal. You're supposed to basically be at attention all the time. Anytime that you're not at attention like a soldier, you're out of control, which means you're not a very good negotiating person. And so if you walk in and start moving around here, this is my best chair, that could be considered that you are not a high-level person. The high-level people traditionally in Korea and in Japan, they will walk in, you will not see them with very big smiles. Sometimes you will not see any wrinkles on their face. That also is a sign of being in control, and they're not going to be dancing around as much as the Americans. The idea of when you get a presentation, when you are getting the offer of the negotiation idea, the chair, for example, you're also not supposed to say immediately, that's too high. You're supposed to be respectful, whatever it is. And again, just like the name card, consider it for a few seconds. Sometimes they will take many seconds to consider it. That is a huge problem. What is that huge problem in North America or in your country? Any of us in the class? If you offer to sell them a chair and you say it's $100 and the other person sits there, looks at it and goes, what does that mean to you? Yeah.
Next, I think I might have to change my offer because I'm unsure if he will think about it or if he wants me to react to this way.
Right. Usually in Germany, they're very serious. You get a price, you're supposed to respond to the price. If you don't respond, usually in North America, if somebody gives you something or they ask you a question, if you don't respond quickly, like really quickly, that is considered rude, it's considered bad. It's basically a sign that you don't like it. Just being quiet means you don't like it. You're basically doing the same thing as giving somebody the middle finger. It's a bad sign. But in Japan, it is a sign that you're considering it. So there's obviously going to be negotiation problems immediately. The North American people offer something, will say the price, $100. Just the Japanese being polite, taking time, will make the North American uncomfortable and possibly immediately offer a discount, even before the Japanese is ready to start talking. In China, many times I've been in meetings where we're negotiating big million-dollar products, but the first meeting is just a low-level meeting for relationships, even though they will be talking about this and they will be talking about the prices and the options. And I have to say, okay, I can give this discount, I can give this extra. All of those people I meet in the first meeting are not serious. They're just the first line of the company. And then they will report that night when I'm at the hotel or back asleep, they report all of that information to their managers. And so the managers will meet me on the second day, already knowing things that make the negotiations much better from them, but they will pretend to start from the beginning. And I've already offered some. And sometimes it's happened 3 times, not just 3 different meetings, but at 3 different levels. First, people meet me, get some benefits and advantages. Second time, second day, people meet me, get some benefits and advantages. And then I meet the final people. So make sure you understand when you are doing international negotiation, who are you meeting? Does that person have the final authority to decide? And don't stop talking or don't be disrespectful if that person doesn't have final authority. They're not wasting your time. For some countries, having that relationship is important. If you don't have a relationship, you can't move to the next level to have a negotiation. That idea of silence can be very, very important. So there's several different international details that we could consider. Later, we will go through and I will identify, or Thong will identify, ideas like, where here, negotiations with Mexicans, negotiations with Indians, negotiations. Did you want to summarize some of these, Thong? No? More details. If you are interested in any of these things, we can talk a lot about them. For example, in Canada, there's generally the French part of Canada or the English part of Canada. However, each group is supposed to be equal. However, you should pay respect for both. The 2 major groups, the French speaking, are in certain parts of Canada everyone is supposed to be well informed, no matter who you meet for negotiation. If they walk up to you and they're not prepared, as we discussed earlier before class, you might want to consider they're a little bit crazy. They're willing to let go of their money easily and give you a good deal. If they're not prepared, if they're not well informed, they're not a great person for partnering. If you're selling a car, go ahead, keep the price high. Most people should know not only what is the price of the product, but what are some competing products. And if you are trying to trick somebody with a price that is significantly higher, they're probably just going to say, yeah, sure, thanks, and turn around and walk out. They might not even try to start negotiating if you're not in the right frame, in the right area. You should be prepared for somebody asking about the competitive products. So make sure you understand also they have certain personal interests, personal plans. They're very focused on getting a certain very specific detail. Like we talked about with Hofstede, North Americans, especially Canadians and Americans, they're very individual focused. And most people, when you say an individual person, they will think of just one person. It's not just an individual person. They're thinking of each individual detail, what they care about for them. I have had many times where the Asian negotiator is more interested in the relationship, getting their company to get together with some other company because of a product, but they're more interested in the long-term developments than just that first meeting. And so the Asian person is more focused on the big picture, and they don't care about the contract at all. The wording is usually not that important. Sometimes, whatever the wording is, whatever they sign, the next day they can walk in and say something different. They could change the ideas. That's changing very quickly. But in Canada, even where you have a comma can completely change the contract. Sometimes a contract will be, even if you try to go to court, a judge will also be looking at the very specific detail. If you have the wrong spelling, if you have the wrong date, if you have any of the wrong terms, that all of it will make it void. And they do not have to refund some things if you made the mistake. So they're very well informed, not just of the price, but of the details, even where they put the contract and comma. They're very determined with their wording. What does each word often mean, especially at a high level? And trust is important. As soon as they identify that you're trying to cheat them, long-term relationships are off. So be aware of that information. And then we go into the United States, the Chinese, the French, Germany, Koreans. Pia, would you like to introduce the German side to the group?
Right. We are serious when negotiating, which means we don't really chit chat that much. So we don't, I mean, maybe we start off being nice, talking about the weather, but then it's very quick to the negotiation. Because I think a lot of people are really trying to separate work and personal life. But other than that, I think it's very similar to Canada, for example, especially with the contract, it's very binding and the words are very important.
Okay. So usually what I understand with the Germans, you don't do a lot of the body language. You don't make grand gestures, which could be popular in North America. You don't talk a lot about baseball games or the social details. You get right to the point. You arrive on time. You're not supposed to be late. That is same in North America. In Korea, since we're all in Korea now, do any of you have any comments about what is popular for negotiations with Korea? Anybody? Ulugbeck, what have you learned about the Koreans' level of politeness or business etiquette or negotiation etiquette? Still there?
Koreans are also long-term oriented. Usually, they more
What type?
they are long-term oriented people usually.
Okay. Anything else?
And
What about Jacob here? Can you add to Ulugbeck? What do you expect with Korean negotiations? Business meetings, class interactions with professors. What have you noticed is usually a requirement? For example, a name card. Usually when you have a business meeting, you go to meet somebody, you should be presenting your name card. If you do not present your name card when you're meeting somebody, that means you're not serious. That means you don't have a significant character yet.
Other something like people, other parties or other social contracts in relation with the parties, each parties that is involved in the negotiation might be involved in that negotiation, I think.
So in Korea, there may be several people involved in a negotiation, not just one person. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's maybe or maybe not.
It could be a team, yes. Anything else you know?
Mm.
With all of these statements?
Well, I would like to add
Okay.
on the slide there is one needs to be introduced and develop a relationship. Talking about the relationship, I think Koreans, they consider where are you from and where your hometown, where your school is from matters a lot. So if that matches with the other side, the negotiations can go really well, which means like relationship matters a lot.
And also, can I add some comment? So on the first thing, like the rank and status are very important and need to match the South Korean team. So I took a negotiation class last semester, and I was working with I was in a group with Koreans, and they one thing about I guess Korean culture is that they wanna decide who's gonna be the leader of the team, and they want to decide the roles of the group so that they can, conduct the negotiation very well. So I guess the first point is really true about the South Korean culture of negotiation or culture itself.
So that all brings things together, the idea of a team. There is a team, they are relationship focused. They're usually looking for the right level. For example, Samsung is changing day by day, but there are some groups, traditional groups, where the Samsung group will not talk to anybody unless that Samsung team assumes that other party, that other group is similarly at a very high level of status. Very big organization. If you're just a small group or a small startup, sometimes Samsung may get embarrassed working with a small group, so you might not be able to have their time at all. And when groups walk in for negotiations, the very high level person is usually, especially for Samsung, with like a director or vice president, they'll have many people going in and introducing and organizing things. So it's very clear who is the top. And they are looking for that other person from another country, for example, a Canadian person joining. If you are just going alone, that is a sign you're showing you're not that serious. Your organization doesn't care that much. So having a large delegation, or at least knowing how big the delegation is going to be at the negotiation, is important, and prepare to have that number of many people with you. Sometimes you can just hire an assistant or hire a translator to make your team look bigger, and have that assistant introduce you as a high level in order to match that Samsung or that Korean negotiator's level. That's one thing. The other thing that I heard you guys talking about is the location. Location is important, very important. The older, more conservative Koreans that you're talking with, and the Chinese and the Japanese, they are very interested in where you are from. That stems originally from the chaebol started in certain cities or certain provinces. And they're so focused on loyalty that anybody from that city had a priority to get into that company. And if you're supplying them or working with them, they give you extra benefits now because they are the successful family member in that city or province. So that successful family member is supposed to give back and be generous to people from that area. Obviously, that many decades have gone by, but it's still a popular idea when you're going even for a university interview. Many university interviews I've been in, the top level university person, the first thing they ask is, where are you from? They're not just asking about the province or the country, they're asking about which neighborhood. For example, in Gangnam is very different than living in other parts outside in the suburbs. Downtown city areas will have a very special association in that older person's mind. And if you're from that successful area, sometimes you get significantly different treatment, regardless of your personal abilities. One other thing, you were talking about introducing them. It's a small thing, but right now I have 2 name cards. They both say my name, they both say my employment details, but one of them has been on the outside of my wallet for quite a bit, and it's getting a little dirty on the outside. The other one is completely white, black and white, brand new. If you give a dirty name card to somebody, that also is a sign that you are a screw up. You're not a good business person. If you don't hand them a name card that shows a high level position, they will be treating you and thinking of you like you're at a low level, disrespectful position, even if it's just dirty. So there's many different details we could talk about. I also wanted to go through in our weekly details, all of these videos, and this is the idea of negotiation with Japanese and Chinese. I made this video, I think 2015, but it was recorded in 2000 and put up on YouTube 2017. So it's here, it's an hour and 27 minutes. If you want more of the details, you can take a look at it. If you guys have questions, please talk. There's a lot of details. You could have gone through this in the beginning. One of the big things that we were talking about is this idea of the American style. What is the American style negotiations? And so the Harvard project was promoting this getting to yes, this Harvard negotiation project. They are saying several different things. Here is a video. It's about 20 minutes long, introducing it. I want to just take a little bit of time in class to give you the comic version, the 4-minute version. If you have any questions, please feel free to speak up at any time. Esther.
A simple parable delivers the key message in Getting to Yes. It's the story of an orange. To be precise,
Gong, Junho, Yasser, can you guys see this video and hear details?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
one orange and two people who both want it. They argue about ownership for a while and eventually decide to divide it, half each. And so they separate, feeling they achieved the fairest solution. What they don't know is why the other person needed the orange. If they had, then the solution would have been quite different, because one wanted the peel to use in baking a cake and the other wanted the fruit to eat. Had they known that, they each would have gotten twice as much, and they most certainly would have got to yes a whole lot more quickly. If you haven't heard that story, maybe you didn't see it coming. That's because in negotiations we focus on our positions, as in I want the orange, rather than the underlying interests that drive those positions, as in I want to bake an orange cake. It sounds so obvious when it's explained, yet we persist in taking positions which tend to be I win, you lose confrontations, often missing solutions that best address the interests of both sides. If we can see our way to take the interests-driven route, it's so much easier to get to yes. The journey to yes. The idea is to constantly search for mutual gains that aren't immediately identifiable. For example, suppose a city plans to double the taxes paid by a local refinery. The city's interest is in getting more money for civic development, but since it can't keep calling on the oil company to foot the bill, it needs to broaden its tax base. The oil firm, on the other hand, wants to expand, and getting a plastics plant to move close by would help with their plans. But the plastics manufacturers would almost certainly be put off by the prospect of high taxes. The shared interest is that both the city and the oil company want industrial expansion. Solutions might include a tax holiday for incoming businesses, a joint campaign to attract new investment, or a reduction in taxes for companies that expand their local activities. On the other hand, failure to identify these common interests could result in soured relationships where everyone loses. The company could slow production due to rising costs, and the city's citizens could lose jobs, creating more strain on the city's already tight resources. 3 points about shared interests are worth remembering. First, many shared interests are often concealed or never uncovered in negotiation. You have to work hard to identify them. Second, there are only opportunities if you find a way of turning them into a shared goal. And third, focusing on them can make negotiations smoother and friendlier. Even differing interests may offer opportunities. Think of that orange story we began with. The interests of the two people were quite different, but could have been dovetailed together to provide a neat solution. Recall the nursery rhyme about Jack Sprat, who could eat no fat, and his wife, who could eat no lean. Get the picture? Getting to yes is all about identifying what's really important for each party, dealing with the differences and finding common ground. It's achieved by brainstorming and trying to view issues from each other's perspectives. This process produces a range of imaginative solutions to satisfy the interests of both sides to create a true win-win solution.
Hopefully you guys agree this was pretty clear. That idea of the orange, I think, is a very good example. So many people, especially when they're from serious countries or serious people, they come to a negotiation sometimes stressed out that they need that very important thing. And so they're going to be difficult from the beginning and not very creative to talk about a new topic. For example, if I am hungry, I don't really care to talk about baking or ingredients for baking. I just want that orange food. I just want that lunch or that dinner or that snack. So talking about some things off topic, your interests can be a very big challenge, especially when you're in other cultures. Almost everybody around the world can get into that same idea. To start with, when you go to some meetings, especially in East Asia, where you're supposed to have the negotiations first, sorry, when you're supposed to have the relationships discussed first, it can completely change the attitude and the outcome of some people. So be aware of those details.
I do have,
Sorry, what was that comment?
yeah, I do have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, from the last week, we have started to talk about negotiation skills based on different cultures. But realistically, let's say I got a job in the global company and I have to make a great deal. Like I have to negotiate with the companies in the USA. And I have found out that the person I will meet is a racist. Then what will be a good tips to drive a good negotiations with the racist? And I have found the Scopius articles saying that a skin color also matters for the negotiations. So what will be the good tips for negotiation of when you're dealing with a racist?
Am I allowed to talk about these? You may want to do this, but it depends on the environment. This is 2021, 2022. We are supposed to be an advanced world. We're supposed to be an advanced society. Everybody has access to the internet. I've been to some of the poorest places on the planet, and even they have internet access. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to expect somebody else. You may want to try to clarify with that company to have somebody that better reflects your position in the company. So you could try to get around working with that person. So what I'm saying bluntly, you should not have to torture yourself. You should not have to lower yourself and degrade yourself, if that's clear. So if you're a company and you're trying to sell these chairs or trying to sell these oranges, and you meet somebody that just thinks you are a low-level person, not serious person, maybe you can just cancel that deal and go on to the next deal. I don't want you to feel bad. However, the reality, in my experience, I am a white North American, that Anglophone, and that WASP, and my family, they were wealthy. They were very wealthy. However, after 15, I started university. They cut me off. I had nothing. But I'm from that powerful, wealthy background. However, much of my life, I've lived in areas where I was a minority, treated like a poor minority. And so where I had to suck it up. I had to accept those deals to get through it and try to move on to the next level. I'm not telling you to do the same thing. I have been insulted many, many times. I won't get into the details.
I understand that. I just started to have this question because one of my alumni, like 3 weeks ago, he went to some kind of business forum in USA. He had to advertise and negotiate the deals with buyers in the forums, but he was kind of discriminated from the entrance of the forums and from the other buyers. So he really didn't know what to do.
Actually, what you're talking about kind of reflects what I was about to say. You should not have to put up with prejudice. You should not have to insult yourself. However, many times you're dealing with small organizations, small people, sometimes small-minded people. Not that many people have been really educated. very few people have learned the true cultures of other countries. In that sense, most people are ethnocentric, thinking their way is the best and anybody else's way is probably stupid or doesn't make sense or you're just not educated. Since most people are like that, you may have to put up with it sometimes. But what you were saying, you're in a forum. I have also been in situations where I am part of a serious big group. I'm dealing with another serious big group. It just so happens that I have to manage it, and that other person, it seemed, had to manage it. I wasn't able to get somebody else or even get somebody else to translate or help that person deal with the international aspects to reduce the racism. One solution I had was the forum. When you are working with another group, especially in East Asia, the idea of the group is far more important than in North America. In North America, I've worked for companies, and if I had to negotiate a contract, it was up to me. If I had to sign for $100,000 or $100 million, I had that authority. I had to do it. It depended on what I thought. But in East Asia, many times it's that group orientation. And so if you are in a forum, you could respectfully identify certain issues, but don't, how can I say, don't embarrass the other group. But you could, for example, if you're being filmed by CNN and you identify to CNN a curious issue, like some sort of treatment or not being aware of international aspects, getting the other person to ask more questions and highlight how the bad person needs to be educated was the solution. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
John,
it makes sense a lot.
repeat what I just
I completely understood.
summarize that.
So like we need to find our ways to not to face the racism conflict, but instead we need to clarify our positions in the forums or any environment, and we might have to be wise to advertise ourselves, not facing with those kind of conflicts.
So yeah, actually, that is also true. So if you separate again, separating the people from the problem, that is one solution. But what I was trying to also talk about, if somebody is being bad, and you identify that to the CNN person, that, hey, look at this interesting situation. You can't say this person is telling you to go screw yourself. You can't say this person is stupid. You can't say this person is ignorant or racist. Because if you do say that, you could go to jail because of defamation. But if you identify to the CNN person, there is this interesting issue for the CNN person to identify, and they start talking about it. You can't talk about it like you are stupid. As soon as the other person loses face or loses image, you could be sued. So you talk about it in a way that indirectly shows that person's stupid. You indirectly show that person is now learning there's a better way. But you can't do it by definitely saying you are bad. So they get insulted. It's best if the other person, like the CNN reporter, identifies how I'm doing something versus how the other person's doing it. So you are not responsible. Does that make sense? Pierre,
But would it be a beneficial for my job, which is like I have to negotiate the business, like not talking, I mean, we are talking about like how to handle with these situations. But if I make this kind of situations public, maybe like the boss of the company wouldn't like. the situations.
Well, I'm trying to say, you should not promote a problem. It's better if that other person, usually there may be like you said, you're in a forum. If the other reporter or the forum management, if they are not with your organization, if they're not with the other organization, or even if they are with that other organization, if you can get somebody outside of your group to identify and talk about it, you often will get an advantage.
Got it.
Somebody else to educate that person about the problem, not you. For example, if you're going to a meeting and the other person has tomato spaghetti sauce on their nose or their cheek, you don't go ahead and say, okay, Mr. Idiot, wipe the tomato sauce off your face. You get the newspaper reporter to somehow identify spaghetti is interesting, and then they talk about it. Is that clear?
It is clear.
Okay. Be very careful. If you tell the other person you are bad because you have spaghetti sauce on you, if you harm his reputation, you are guilty of several crimes. You could go to jail, and then after you go to jail, he could sue you also. Defamation is very serious in East Asia. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions related to international negotiation? There's lots of material. Hopefully you guys have gone through and seen some of these things. What about the summary of this book? The idea of the North American famous book, they say BATNA. What is BATNA? Anybody?
Maybe the best alternative something.
Yes. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What they were talking about with that orange deal, you're not supposed to just say, I want half the orange, I want half the orange. You're supposed to identify not only what you want as the prime thing, but try to identify alternatives. Even better, try to identify and get the other person, the person with the spaghetti on their face, get that person to identify they have the orange, they have the peel, they have the fruit inside, they have a knife to cut it, they have a table, they have many things they can offer, maybe even a cook or a chef. So by getting that person to identify many alternatives, you can bring that into the negotiation and get better results. So the best alternative, BATNA stands for best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Try to keep that in your mind all the time. Try to think of what are many other alternatives that relate to it that could help the other party. Separate the people from the problem. Try to not make things too emotional is what the American book is saying. Another thing, part of the American view is the first idea to focus on. Negotiation or dispute resolution has two separate kinds of interests. The first interest is substantive. The other one is the interpersonal relationship. Make sure you identify those two different aspects or kinds of interests. Next, the people problem is seen as stemming from one or more of three basic categories. Sometimes people don't see the same thing you see. I see this as a good thing. I see this as good luck. I see this as I'm okay. Other people from other countries see the exact same thing, but they perceive it as a very bad sign. So perception can completely change. Two people looking at a contract on the table, one person sees a 6, the person on the other side of the table sees a 9. It's just a perception. And then there's the emotion we've started to talk about and the communication. Make sure you understand communication is clear. Make sure you understand that whole idea of SRC. What is SRC? When we talked about parochialism, ethnocentrism, and the biggest problem is SRC. What is SRC again?
self-reference criteria.
And so how does that relate to communication? Whenever you're talking, you have an idea. That is a problem. It doesn't matter what's in your head. It doesn't matter what is in your mind. What matters is what the other person understands. If you're saying something and it's translated, even many times if it's translated word for word, that's not going to translate across the cultural barrier. You need to check not only it's translated word for word, but then make sure you check what do they understand that means to them. And is that a good or bad thing? What is their emotion or understanding of that serious sentence you just communicated? Many times you're lost in translation. Many times that negotiation statement, that key statement will be lost in translation, especially when you're looking for alternatives, like the orange and that person that wants only the peel. One person sees the peel as garbage. The other person sees the peel as the diamonds or gold. That's exactly what they want. So when you're describing that, when initially you just want half an orange, it can be very difficult. Make sure you check those details. That whole idea of focus on the interest, not the position. It's very hard when you get outside of North America, especially when you're dealing with those people that the position, who you are, the level in the company, your age is very important. Your name card is very important. How many people come with you is very important. So if North Americans are telling you to get away from the position, automatically you're giving disrespect for people in China, Japan, or Korea. So be aware of that. You have to respect that other side. They say the most powerful interests relate to the basic fundamental human needs. These include our need for security, economic well-being, sense of belonging, recognition, and control over your own life, one's life. How is that a problem? Let's read that again. So, did I see, yes, sir, you're here today? Or Jacob here? Yes, sir, you are here. Could you read that sentence again? The one that's in bold.
Okay,
Sentence?
Fisher and Urey realized that our most powerful interests relate to basic fundamental human needs. These include our need for security, economic well-being, a sense of belonging, recognition, and a control over one's life. They point out that these fundamentals do not just relate to individuals, but also should extend it to any group involved in the negotiation process, whether it be corporate entities, organizations, or even nations.
Okay, thanks. Stop. The idea I wanted to focus on is their most important point. Their most important sentence here is these human needs include the need for security. So North Americans, they need security. Okay, they need economic well-being. They need money, personal wealth. They also need a sense of belonging, recognition, and control over one's life. Even Google identifies there is a problem just by the translation of one's life. What is that problem? If a North American comes to Korea, comes to Japan, comes to most of the world that is collectivist, more than half of the population, more than 4 billion people are group oriented. How is this an issue? Anybody? Jung Moon, do you have any comment about that? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What is at the top versus the rest of the world? Pia, you had a comment? Right. So what this is saying, they are focused on their one aspect, their one life. Most people in the world are focused on the group. Even more than just lunch. I've been in Korea for many years, And it was probably more than 5 years before I realized that many times, especially when I was in big companies, and I care a lot, I really like another person in the competing company. When we go to lunch, that other person doesn't go to lunch when they're hungry. I was shocked. Why do they go to lunch? Can anybody guess? Can you guess?
To listen some secret.
I didn't hear you.
Like, to listen some secrets from other company.
Oh, okay. Even beyond the secrets, some people, they will meet you for meals. They will meet you for drinking and snacks, going to norebongs. Yes, to try to get more information, to try to get secrets. You're correct. But even just a regular human being, many times when that person, for example, is working at Samsung, they will go to lunch, even if they're feeling sick, even if they don't want to eat. Why? When a Canadian, for example, I want to stay away from food because I'm sick. Thanks for inviting me to lunch, but heck no, I'm not going to go. I'm feeling sick. What? Can you explain more of that? The idea of some people care more about the other people around you than your own stomach. If you want, I can explain a little bit more about you. Several people, especially in big companies, you're working with a big team, like the marketing department or the engineering department or the engineering team. Sometimes there could be 100 people in your department or your team. And there's high-level people and low-level people. And when the spotlight is on you, when people are really looking about how you are doing together with the director or together with the vice president, many times in Korea, that Korean person will do anything that person thinks is best for the higher level person. If the higher level person thinks it's lunchtime, the lower level person will prepare lunch or go to lunch. If that lower level person thinks that higher level person wants a certain type of food or a certain type of drink, they will order that type of food and drink. Many times they order it for everybody. So that lower level person sometimes has to go eat and drink, even if they're sick, even if they don't want any food. They're doing it because they think somebody else important in the group wants it. That is very, very different. So that idea of negotiation, make sure you understand what some people think is a core requirement could be completely different in other countries. Is that understood? I'll assume it's understood. So mutual options for mutual games. They state that there are 4 obstacles which you must overcome to get a good deal. Overcome premature judgment. Overcome the search for one answer. Overcome the assumption of there's only so much orange. Overcome thinking that solving their problem is their problem. Make sure you understand this, even though it's the North American idea, I think it's good for no matter where you are. Try to broaden your mind. Don't just focus on that one thing. Let's go through this. UNO, can you take one of these and explain what it means and how it can be helpful? For successful negotiation, some people say, the North American book says, there are 4 obstacles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you identify one of these and explain why it's important?
I think the assumption of the fixed pi is like explaining that there is their interest or the something like the answers are fixed and doesn't change, and it's kind of a misperception that the assumption is fixed, but actually the something like interest or answers or solutions are variable and has variety of options. So I think that's kind of what is talking about the fixed pi thing.
Yes, don't limit your mind. Try to identify you want something, but start with identifying how could that be seen other than what I think? What are the advantages or benefits of that main point I'm negotiating? What are other benefits other than what I'm looking at? So that orange, it's food for one person, but it's a cooking ingredient for somebody else. It's also a weight for another person. It's also a ball for another person. It could be a toy. It could be an art piece for another person. There's many different views. Don't just look at that one first fixed pie, that first fixed option. So there's many things to think of, many things to review. We still have a couple more, we have more sessions to talk about this, but we're out of time for today. I'll just point out some of these details again. Money on the mind. I started to talk about this. You guys remember, what was I saying about money on the mind? How does money change negotiations for people? No. Money changes negotiations. Yes, you can buy more, but it actually, studies, research has shown the more one person thinks he's powerful, or the more one person thinks he's wealthy, the more greedy he gets. And the person that is less wealthy is usually expected to give more, even though they're less wealthy, they're poor. That was quite interesting. Talking again, next class, we'll talk more about Korean Japanese systems. I'll go in and zoom in on this. We're basically finished for today.
Yes, so the lessons are very interesting, so we can continue our class on Friday. So it's time for
Yes, please try to next class with some example that is educational about negotiations. Since everybody has to negotiate every day, try to bring something to class to talk about. For example, this is talking about Korea is different than Japan. Another interesting story down here. This one is very interesting. For example, in Korea, people say Samsung is the best part of Korea. But research shows that Samsung actually is largely Japanese, which some Korean people may hate. So try to bring something to next class to share this. And again, I will remind you, I encourage you to come with maybe some of these video details. These are video details, and these are research reports that are already in the class folder. Bring this stuff to class, prepare to present. What is this? What is the significance? If you can find something new, even better. I have dozens of files talking about this stuff. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Have a nice day.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much, sir.
Bye bye. Have a good day.